The definition of fascism, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is an authoritarian and nationalistic right-wing form of government and social organisation. But what does that mean today, in 2025? The Labour government really wants to tell people about how it's deported 16,400 people, regular migrants, failed asylum seekers, etc. But it also reveals another strand of thinking, this idea that maybe if the government is seen to punish people who come to the country, then it will win elections, it will win in the Red Wall, in places like that. But as part of its strategy, it specifically announced that it's tackling or targeting racialized spaces, from barbershops, nail shops, or fast food restaurants. Many people think that this is part of Labour's strategy to head off reform. You see, in the July 2024 election, Reform UK came second place in a lot of seats where Labour won. At the same time, we know that they got millions of votes. And what are they promising? Things like net zero immigration. They see the housing crisis, they see the low wage crisis, all is related to the fact that the UK has immigrants. But beyond just that story, we have another question to ask. When it comes to people scapegoating a minority for the problems that society faces, whether it's the Labour Party, the Conservative Party, or Reform UK, we have to ask another question, which is, when it comes to fascism, historically, from Benito Mussolini to Adolf Hitler, we're also talking about corporate power, capitalism. Nowhere is this more clear than KPMG, one of the big four consultancy groups that the UK government has spent £200 million on to train civil servants. Now, paying private consultants cost the government £3.4 billion last year. Did you know that to abolish the two-child benefit cap would cost about £1.3 billion a year? We have to wonder, what is more important? Then when you consider politics in the UK more broadly, who donates to whom? Frank Hester, man who called for Diane Abbott to be shot, the multi-millionaire whose company, Phoenix Partnership, is worth over £1 billion in part because of NHS contracts, is one of the biggest Conservative Party donors of all time. You'd have to talk about the Labour Party too, which has courted support from billionaires. And then you'd also have to talk about Reform UK, which took £2.3 million in donations from groups that DSmog says are linked to climate denial and all sorts of other fossil fuel related entities. Who really gets a say in our politics? If it's supposed to be one person, one vote, then why does it feel to so many people like corporations get to call the shots? So why talk about the link between politics and money? Partly because in every situation that we can think of historically, when somebody suffered, somebody still managed to make money. What about those who made millions during the apartheid regime in South Africa? Take Elon Musk's father, for example. Or what about the BMW corporation that was able to turn itself into a weapons-making manufacturer when Hitler needed it the most? Or we can talk about those who managed to sell ropes and picnic treats whilst black people were being lynched in the Jim Crow South. Or today, BAE Systems, Lockheed Martin, Booking.com, companies that are making money from, for example, the subjugation of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, or even the destruction and murder of millions in Ukraine. This is the world that we live in, where, yes, the destruction of a tree can mean GDP goes up, but at the same time, you can lose an entire way of life. When we talk about scapegoats today, when wages are stagnating but billionaires get richer, the collective net worth of billionaires in the UK being greater than the GDP of Switzerland and Poland, then we have perhaps a better picture of why people feel this deep anger in their spirit, in their bones, that things aren't really fair. And when things get to that point, when society becomes so unequal, it's easy to see why people want to point the finger at somebody else. We saw the effects of this kind of thinking perhaps no more clearly than with Southport, with the murder of 3 little girls at a Taylor Swift-inspired dance class, Elsie, Bibi, Alice, who were killed by Axel Rukadabana, a British citizen. But no sooner than the murders had happened had people switched focus from the painful death of 3 little people, torn apart from their families forever. And instead, the focus became about Muslims, about immigration, about refugees and asylum seekers, none of which Axel Rukadabana was. And perhaps this is part of explaining why reform is so popular. Reform takes millions from millionaires. Rupert Lowe is a multi-millionaire. Nigel Farage is a multi-millionaire. But they want to say that they're on our side. But how can they be? When instead of pointing the finger at the rich and powerful who exploit workers or destroy our environment, They instead focus on Muslims, asylum seekers and refugees, people who in some respects are forced to live off just £7 a day, who are denied the ability to work, who in many ways from their housing, accommodation, food or running away from disaster, poverty and danger have far more in common with the average person in the UK than the average Reform UK MP. So what if the reason for why Reform is so popular is because of that story of the scapegoat? The one in which the easy answers are the most digestible and simple. The one in which you can blame your problems not on the multimillionaires who are paying you pennies for your work that is producing value worth thousands of pounds, but instead on those who speak a different language, worship a different God, dress differently to you, look a different way to you, or just seem different. That is the politics of easy answers. But that doesn't have to be the way that we do things. And if you'd like to learn more about a different way, then see the description down below.